Well, hi folks. It's the first week of March. Temperature outside is a balmy 22 degrees. Was about down to about 5 last night, and we have several inches of snow on the ground from the storm that hit over the weekend. So guess what? I'm working inside again today. We talked about this living room remodeling before we started into it. I explained about the faux graining on the wainscoting and so on, and I've come further through now, ripping the rest of this wall off. Basically, I have all the old wainscoting off that I want to. I want to try to salvage, if I can, the window frames. I don't want to have to reframe them, so I might be able to work around them. Now, my plan here, well, let me give you a little bit of what I think the history of this place was, just based on what I'm finding here. If you look right up here, you can see the actual stone foundation. This was an outside wall of the house at one time. There was an open porch beyond it, but it was an outside wall, so it was a weight-bearing wall, as you can see from these rafters. And it looks like they just used field stone, just basic shale, to pile this up. I think it's about 2 feet thick, 18 inches to 2 feet. And then I think the first thing that was done, since we've got multiple layers of plaster here, I think the first thing that was done was this. I don't know if that's plaster or some type of concrete. I'm not that well versed with it. Look, if you look here real closely, you can see somebody put their fingerprints in when it was soft. I don't know how long ago that goes back to, but that would have been the original wall covering in 1870 when the house was built. Just like a whitewashed, skim-coated stone. Not very warm, obviously. There's no insulative value there. And this was probably the way the whole thing was. Now, at some point, again, like I said, probably in the 20s or the 30s would be when this faux grain wainscoting was put on. You know, this stuff I was telling you about the last time. I think what they did is they put a second coat of plaster on here. You can see it's about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches thick. And then they actually put wallpaper on it. You can't see it well there, but some of this is a bit more preserved. You can see the old wallpaper that was put on over that plaster back then. I have no idea the exact age, and it's in pretty rough shape, but it was on there. So then that would have been the wall in here, for probably 40 or 50 years, just the second coat of plaster, and then the wainscoting down beneath, and then wallpaper over the plaster. That's probably the same time when this ceiling had plaster and lath. If you can look here on this beam, you can see all the little nail holes where the lath was nailed on to hold the plaster. So at that era, before drywall, that's how they brightened up this living room. Now that's number 2. Now we get to number 3. If you see here, this is furring that was put in here by the carpenter. This furring frame, he just set it right on top of where the chair rail was here. I've taken this piece of chair rail out. And then he put paneling, an old-fashioned kind of, there's a small piece here I can show you. It's been painted, but it was that old-fashioned hardwood paneling with the aluminum trim to hold it in place. So the upper half of this wall at that point was paneling, and that's also when they ripped down the plaster and lath here, put furring on the ceiling, and then put the 1 by the 1 inch or 1 foot by 1 foot ceiling tiles in here, and so it gave it a whiter appearance, a nicer appearance. They actually had to drop the ceiling. It was about 2 inches lower than what it is now, because you had your furring and then you had your ceiling tile. So 1.5 inches to 2 inches it was actually lower, which this is a low ceiling to begin with, which is why I'm not gonna drop it again. So then in the 70s, that was the way the living room looked. You had that light brown paneling on the top, and then the dark brown wainscoting on the bottom, and then a white ceiling. Now, obviously, I'm getting rid of that, and what I'm going to do here This is actually the second wall of the living room that I'm working on. The first wall I had done a number of years ago here. This was my priority, this back wall, because this is below grade, and it was very damp, and also it was cold. It was a cold wall. So what I did on this wall is I actually ripped everything down to the bare skim-coated concrete, cement, whatever it was, on the stones, on the foundation stones, and then I started from there. I put sheet plastic, and then I put, I think it was 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch foam board insulation. Then I framed up new 2x4 walls for this, put R13 bat insulation in between, ran my wiring, and then I put moisture resistant drywall here on the top, and this T111, a narrow, it's like 1/4 inch or some odd smaller dimension T111. That's what my wife wanted, and then I made a new chair rail just with some 1x2 lumber. So that's what this wall is, and now it's changed it completely. It's no longer damp, it's no longer cold, it's a very warm wall. So that is a little more involved than my intention is going to be on this wall, just because I don't have the depth to put a full 2x4 wall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the rest of this top layer of plaster, see what I can do as far as getting rid of this skim coat to bring it back further. Again, because I'm trying to salvage these window frames, I need the depth. I need to be able to get some sheet plastic on here, again, as a vapor barrier to keep the moisture out. Actually, before I do that, what I will do, you can see with these stones, is they're not tight because they were stacked. There isn't a whole lot of mortar there. If it was, it's crumbled by now. It's not going anywhere, but what I'll do is I'll get that spray foam insulation and fill in the cracks to make it warmer. So that'll be first step. Then plastic sheathing, several mil thick, just to keep the dampness out. And then I'll go with probably a 1/2 inch foam board insulation. I don't have the room to go much thicker. And then I will use this furring that's here, or put new 1x furring in to give me support to put the same thing as I put on the other wall, drywall on the top, and then that T111 on the bottom, new chair rail, etc. So it'll be a multi-step process, but it should make this wall fairly warm too. I'm not as concerned about the warmth on this wall as I was the other one, simply because there's now an enclosed porch on the other side here, so it's not exposed directly to the frost, it's not exposed directly to the wind. So I just want to cut out any kind of dampness and cut out any kind of cold air leakage if I can manage that. So that's where we are here. My next move is going to be to chip out all the rest of this old plaster. I'm probably going to take that base plate, wooden base plate, off and work with something different. I don't know about this middle one yet, if I can salvage that and work that into my reframing. I will. I'll have to see how it goes. And then before I put the whatchamacallit, the T111 on here, I've got to run electric wires, because I need to get 2 baseboard electric heaters in here. That's the primary heat of the house. The wood stove is technically my secondary. So I'll probably go with 2 4-footers here. I've got to calculate my square footage and the requirements for the kilowatts and the BTUs and stuff. There are formulas like that you can figure out from the size of your room what size and how much electric heat you need in to be optimally protected. If you put too much in, you're just wasting electricity. If you put too small in, the heaters are going to have to work harder to maintain temperature, and again, you're wasting electricity. So you want to balance. And we'll get to that, and I'll show you that when we do it. The old ones are a bit rusted from the dampness in here from a number of years. So we will replace them and rewire them. Now I also have to put some new receptacles on this wall. I want to put one here below this light switch. In fact, that's where my feed comes in for this room, so I'll drop down to that, come across here. What I'd really like to do is to cut in a receptacle there on the windowsill, on the side there of the window, so that you can plug in something on the window. You don't want wires hanging down, of course, on your baseboard electric heat. That's why it's not code, it's against code to put a receptacle right above an electric heat baseboard. It has to be off a certain distance away from them. But if I put that in there, it won't interfere. And then I'll put another one maybe in the center of this wall. Same thing here. I'll think about putting a receptacle in the side wall there. It'd be good to plug the phone in. Baseboard here, and then I will probably put another receptacle either in this corner or around the corner when I get to tearing this out. So excuse me. And then I have a couple other places along this wall when I get to it that I need to put receptacles. So I don't want to overdo it with receptacles, but in a room that has a lot of activity in, like a living room, you really need a fair amount of receptacles. Bedrooms aren't so much anymore because you just, you've got a few that you need. Bathroom, you don't need that many. Kitchen, obviously, you have a lot, but a living room, you're going to use a lot of different electrical devices, so you want to make sure you have enough. So we'll get to that when we do, and I'll show you how we're going to do that, and see how this wall will come together. This will be the two long walls in this room done then. Then I just have the short wall over there that goes up to the stairs. I'm not going to tear that woodwork out on the stairway there. I'm going to leave that, and then just this short wall here that goes over to the chimney. Again, it's a shorter wall. I'm not sure what I'm going to totally do. If I'm going to tear all that wainscoting out around the back of the chimney, or just leave that as a feature from the old. If I don't have to redo that, that might be a good idea. But we'll see when I get to it. It's a long, slow process. You can't rush it. This wainscoting that I pulled off, I'm going to stick all this up in the shed in case I use it someday for something. It's still fairly good quality wood. Certainly better quality wood than you can get nowadays, so maybe it can be retasked for something, I don't know. But for right now, we're just trying to finish ripping out the old plaster here so I can get down to the woodwork, and then we'll go from there. Shouldn't take too much T111 or drywall to do this wall, because you've got two big windows in the way there, so that certainly not as much as it took on the back wall where there were no windows. But that's what we're working on today because of the second mini polar vortex coming through here now. And hopefully we can work on this and get this all done before the weather gets nice, so that we can go outside and start doing your spring cleanup and get ready for the garden. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe to our channel.